welcome to another episode of AI Unleashed. We got 25 minutes here where me and Mr. Kevin Dorsey are going to dive in and just talk about, all things generative AI, what we're seeing in the rev orgs, any other topics that we think are kind of relevant. Today, we're going to talk about different ways to leverage generative AI to simulate calls, to do additional role play. And I think we're at the very beginning of this, right? There's some tools I've already seen that have come out that are a little robotic, but the idea that you can utilize generative AI to build skill faster in what might not be a perfect real world simulation, but is continuing to get there more and more. I think is this an important things for people to realize this kind of new tool that they probably have in their tool belt, right? That is it perfect today? No, but if you're somebody who's a rep or you're building an onboarding plan or you're a leader and you want a chance to get your reps, maybe it's not in a perfect scenario, but usually, I mean, KD, it takes, 3 months for a rep to get their first 20 meetings, or maybe longer. But imagine a world where, as they're doing that, they can go in the simulator. And again, it's not a perfect simulator, right? But they can start to do more and more and more of that. So we're going to talk through some of those applications. I really believe we're going to be able to ramp reps, much faster than before because of this, simulator, but we'll get into some of those details. Usually what we'll talk about first is in the news. So in case you missed it, memory came out. I'll drop a quick link in there for those of you. KD, have you started to mess with that yet? You started to mess with memory?
I have now. Once I've set, because I was on the road a lot, but yeah, starting to, so it remembers and keeps like the train of thought going, makes even some of the things we're talking about today with role playing very powerful. So I think this is great. What I didn't realize until one of the things you actually shared, Brian put together, was like the ability to turn it on and off. I think that's also very powerful as well. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, exactly. And like the ability, so for those of you, just think about it, what it allows you to do, and again, we'll just do, a lot of you might already know this, but each individual ChatGPT thread is its own kind of memory, right? I call it like its own little baby brain. It doesn't have any clue what the rest of them do. And what memory allows you to do is just in any of those baby brain chats, just quickly say, always remember that I'm Jake Dunlap, CEO of Scaled Consulting, and I sell to this persona, right? Or something like that, right? So then I don't have to always do that. I don't have to say, hey, here's a link, here's what you do, etc. So I think memory is the first step to this kind of dynamic learning. It'll continue to evolve. We don't know when ChatGPT 5 is going to come out.
Mhm.
But if you kind of see what's just happened in the last 6 months with custom GPTs, memory, those types of things, you're just going to see more and more of these types of things pop up. Somebody asked, memory is just a feature in OpenAI. So if you have the paid version, you automatically get memory. Just go to your settings and you'll settings, personalization, and then you'll see memory pop up. So that's a good one. Next up, we've got here, we've done some of this, we did a survey here back in February, which was, have you ever used ChatGPT to role play? So the results then, let me pull up this poll and we'll pull this one up. The results then were like, no, right? So I think we had, what were the percents here, KD?
It
What did
was
we have in terms of
it was like
people that were using it?
70% said they don't use it to role play. It was like just under 70%. I think 20% said like, oh, like a couple times, and then very small, like said, oh, we use it constantly. It was like 16% said like
They've
constantly.
used it, yeah.
So the vast majority fell into the don't use it at all bucket. And then the next big one, just like 80-20 always, you know, 80% of them either don't do it or did it once or twice and then stopped. And then 20% have done it regularly. So
Yeah.
it's like 16% or something.
All right. Well, let's see if this is changing at all as we jump into. Maybe after today it will. Maybe after today people are like, "Oh crap, I didn't even
Mm-hmm.
think about that."
Well, and I'm excited to give my answer to this because it's a different way to look at this process with role plays. Which because I don't look at the favorite way to role play based off what we're practicing. I'm looking at it based off what are the things we have to ingrain. So there's certain parts of each of this, right? Where it's like everyone talks about, you can't script out everything, which is true. You can't script out everything, but damn it,
Sure.
what 80% of the objections are. You know what 80% of the use cases are. It's the high repetition things. And the way I described this to my team internally when we started to use this, because you were calling it out a little bit earlier, like it's not perfect. It's like I used it as the example of like hitting off a tee. Hitting off a tee is not exciting. Hitting off a tee is not like a perfect scenario planning for a curveball coming from a left-hander, but it's the foundation to put in. That's what this type of practice is for me. It's that hitting off the tee, right? Each and every day of like, hey, the objections, do it 20 times. Okay, disco questions, do it
Yep.
20 times. It's a little bit
Yep.
more on the repetition
That's right.
of it than it is creating a perfect scenario that's going to mimic your buyer perfectly. It's like, no, what are the things reps need to be doing and saying? That's how you build out the role plays in ChatGPT.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that that's the spot on way to think about it, right? It's like, hey, we sell to this type of persona, and these are the four industries, right?
Mhm.
So can I get those at bats on, hey, what again does a VP of ops care about in manufacturing? Like, what are those things? So again, to your point, that way, whenever I get, just like a professional athlete goes and trains and does like a repetition, over and over again off the tee, or, shoots a basketball, 100 times from one place. Um, when you get in this situation now, you're like, oh, okay, like I'm much more equipped now. So it seems like, again, most people still aren't using it. So we've
Mhm.
got 63%, which
Ooh.
I don't know if there's a statistically large enough amount of people that have voted, that are using it. So that's exciting. I think that's exciting for those of you tuning in today, to really, you know, to really be able to dive in and, try to see what's possible as a part of this. So, all right. So before we dive in, kind of last thing we'll share here, which is really exciting. So, some of you who are watching now have maybe attended one of our workshops before, which are kind of, more hands on versions of a lot of the things we talk about, officially today. And if you have already attended, some of you might be like, well, Jake, I already attended the workshops. No problem. You will also get access, for, at no additional cost to these new ones we have. So, starting today, we are launching live. We've got a 101 Intro to ChatGPT, a 201 Advanced ChatGPT Prompting, and a 301 Advanced Custom GPTs, which really kind of help you to understand how to build prompting into the back end to make, these, what we would call these, agents. So if you're somebody who's like, Jake, I love these sessions with you and KD, these Chat GPT workshops, the 101, the 201, and the 301 are just going live today. And, the normal price is $199. But, like I said, and if you're somebody who's already attended, don't worry, um, you know, uh, you're going to get access as well too. I'm going to drop the link in here, and you will get access. You can get all three workshops today for 99 bucks. So, which is pretty amazing. Like, if you're going to invest in yourself, like, this is it. There's a coupon code that will be live today only, so don't go sharing this out. Michelle's sold. Michelle, make sure to this coupon code. Becca, if you can drop it in my LinkedIn folks too. So if you're joining us on LinkedIn, we've got about 20 plus folks on LinkedIn. Tune into these. These, again, to me, and Katie and I talk about this all the time. Learning these tools is not optional. It's just about when. Everyone will have to know how to leverage ChatGPT and generative AI in their day to day, and you can choose. You want to learn how the internet works, in 1996 or 1999, So whichever one you want to use, that's really up to you. But that's how transformational this is.
And I
What
think
would you tell anyone, KD, again, who's like, Jake, I tune in. This is interesting. Like, what would you tell anyone in terms of like, getting up to speed, as well?
what I was about to say there is like, I think there's a lot of people that you don't know what you don't know yet. And so like coming into like the workshops, coming into some of the pre-built bots is it'll show you new things that maybe you haven't considered yet. Right. Like even looking at the audience today, 70% of people aren't role playing yet still, with ChatGPT. It's like things like it's a lot of like you don't know what you don't know. So showing up, getting in there, it'll show you things like, oh, then you can go, then you can start to dabble a little bit more. Like a company I'm working with right now, they're asking like they ask the orgs, like, hey, like, where do you want AI to help? Where do you want AI to help? Right. And they start writing out their lists. And I called the list faster horses lists. Right. The old Henry Ford quote, where he's like, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, but he built a car. Right. So when people don't know what AI is capable of, they can't fathom the right things to even ask for help. And so that's why I think it's so valuable for these workshops, for these pre-built GPTs. It'll show people what's possible that ideally they can build upon.
I love that. All right. So yes, I just realized I shared the link in the host and panelists, which really does not help any of you
That does not help. All right,
in terms of actually attending. So that might be helpful. Let me grab it here. Boom. And boom. Katie, it's good to have you back, man.
feels
Good
good
to
to be back, man.
good to have you back, man.
Been
Um, so
too long.
Brandon, there it is, man. There's the link. Michelle, there's the link. Sign up. You also get access to tier one of the innovative seller community. So there's a lot of stuff we're working on there, which is pretty cool too. So, and it looks like as a bonus, you actually get like a live webinar. So for anybody who signs up now, and definitely like this is the time, like go to your boss and say, hey, like they're doing this, like, we should sign our team up. If this is something where you or your team has been curious, we're also going to be hosting for anybody who signs up with the coupon code. Brian's going to reach out personally and we're going to do a live webinar for any of the people that sign up. So get access to these 101, 201, 301. And then you'll also get access to a live webinar where you can ask more questions and be selfish and those types of things as well. So let's talk about the main topic, which is this idea of role playing.
Mhm.
And let's think about hiring a new rep, right? And and you've hired hundreds, probably thousands of reps. What are the things that you're like, and not even a new rep. Maybe you can talk about both new rep and drilling with your team. What
Mhm.
are the things that you think about when you're like, we've talked a little bit about some of them already, but if I said, Katie, if I could teach my team to get better at these one or two things, like what would those be?
So, like skill wise with the role playing, or just
Yeah,
in.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, what are the things? And maybe it's not even role playing. It's like I said, hey, at the foundation of sales, I want to
Mhm.
make this person on my team better, right?
Mhm.
What are the things that you would have them practice? You talked about the golf swing, right? The
Yeah.
repetition. What are the things that you think are most important? And then maybe even as people get more tenure, that they kind of forget that will help people to get better and close more or sell more or book more meetings.
Yeah. So the first big one that we do talk about a lot is actually knowing the personas, right? But at a more detailed level and making it active learning, not passive learning. Like we talked about this 7 or 8 episodes ago. What I love about this is you have to engage, right? So more often than not, when you're onboarding reps, you tell them what the personas are. They read it. They never have to fill anything out. They're never typing anything. They're
Right.
never filling in the blanks, anything like that. So persona and industry knowledge is huge to quiz them on a regular basis, right? Like if anyone listening, I don't care what your industry is, if I pinged your reps right now and asked them the top 3 personas, the top 3 pain points of those personas, the top 3 impacts that those pain points cause, and the common solutions that people have in place to do it and why you're better, how well would they do?
That's right.
Like, and you got to ask yourself that tough question. Like, how those are foundational. How well would your entire team do right now? So that's first and foremost industry knowledge, persona knowledge, impact knowledge. Then we get into like I'll say the known knowns. What are the most common questions that need to be asked in discovery? That's a known known. What
Yeah.
are your most common objections? That's a known known. Like we know these things and we have a best practice. That is where this is just foundational for me in terms of teams is I call it the 2 a.m. test. So like there's a bucket of things that I call like I put them in the 2 a.m. bucket, meaning I should be able to hit up Jake at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, doesn't matter how many high noons he has. And I say, you know what, we're thinking of sticking with our current setup. And funny enough, I know Jake would pass this test. He would like be able to snap into mode immediately and handle that objection. That's a known known. So that's how I'm looking at it: is objections the known known, the most powerful questions known knowns, and then like the persona and industry knowledge known knowns. That's where I focus the most with this.
Yeah, I think that that's such a good point to bring up. You know, if you think about like the number one reason or the number one way in the survey people said was objection handling, and I call it what I say is, you know, these known knowns, and it is shocking to me that how and again much more frequently than not, I would say 7 out of 10. When a rep gets an objection, I call it, it's like Mike Tyson punched him in the mouth. Like, what? What? Well, and then it's like they go into panic mode. And
Right.
it's
And
like,
we know what
how
they are. We
how
know
do
what.
you not think, like, guys, if it was called information giving, I wouldn't pay you commission, right? Like like of course, and the other thing is this reframing of like, it's not an objection, it's a fucking question. I'm just asking a question. Like, you don't need to get flustered. I'm literally just saying, how does this integrate with this? And I think these known unknowns, it's again, it's not, there's not an infinite variations of them, you know.
But
There's a finite number of them, right? For all your products, you only solve 4 or 5 problems. You don't solve 85 problems. There's only going to be 4 or 5 common things that people bring up. And to your point, if you can continue to do that, it's going to be much, much, much more
Mhm.
effective in terms of, again, like, oh, they said that, boom, I can test that, boom, I can test that. And again, it's like those at bats that, you know, your boss is busy, maybe they can role play with you a few times a month. Like, it's just
Right.
there's just so much opportunity here that you don't need to wait around for your boss. You can do it
Mhm.
yourself.
And what's interesting about this, that because I've been a practice guy for a decade, right? People know that about me. That's something built into my teams. I think I've fine tuned it pretty well on how to run a good practice session with a rep and go through it. There's always that fear of judgment when you're practicing with your boss. Always, right? I made a big whoops to Daisy. I was invited to a call, right? Where there's a large deal that the company is trying to close. I was invited to the call. They're like, hey, we want KD to join. And I was like, are you sure? Are you sure you want, is the rep ready for me to be on this call?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's gonna create a whole level of like nerves and anxiousness. Like, oh yeah, no, like they're yeah, it's all good. I jumped on it and it was awful. Like it really went poorly. And the manager was like, I can hear it. I can hear it. And I was like, that emotion. So the role playing with GPT takes some of that emotion away too. I'm just trying to get better. I'm not being judged on this right now. I'm just trying to get better. And reps actually, once they got used to it, engaged with it really well.
Yeah, well, I think that that's a good call out. That's more of like also just, this is more of a tips and tricks, which is what you get from me and KD too, which is, you know, people that have been on thousands, if not tens of thousands of calls and listen into reps calls, is if you want to run a meeting with your boss, and now I make sure to tell them, what is my role? Make
Mm-hmm.
sure you always say, if you're the leader, say, hey, what do you want my role to be? And if you're a leader, listen to me now, leaders, stop being Captain Save a Deal. Okay.
Yes.
If you tell me, Jake, this is what I want your role to be, I'm gonna play that role.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't, I gotta, like, you know, half the conflict you create with having your boss on the
Mm-hmm.
call is your fault, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's your fault as a leader or your fault as a rep, like, it's your job to tell them. And look, there are, don't get me wrong, there are bad managers that were like, they can't help themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, pro tip there, try to manage up
Yep.
whenever you can. And yeah, I'll give you an example of like what one of these looks like. Let me share my screen real quick here, everyone. Let's go to share screen. Here we go. So yeah, here you go. Like, you can, so you could even, so this is like an example of what a good custom GPT looks like, where again, like task one, you can literally just like upload it. And again, I'll just kind of, you know, kind of go through this. Like, Clayton is the person they're trying to meet with, right? Um, right? So then this is like, I'm going to gather some things around Clayton. Here's our website. I'm an AE. And it's like, great, let's like jump into this stuff. And again, like what you'll see here is like, hey, good to hear, busy, blah, blah, blah. Like it'll try to mimic some of these like natural language things. And I will tell you this, like, to Katie's point, you know, it won't really, ChatGPT is purposely trained. I think everybody needs to know this, to be very passive and accepting. And even when you tell it to be like more direct, it still will never quite get to what a call is. But again, you can start to see it. What it will do is it'll say, hey, for this type of company that sells into this industry, for this type of persona, it's going to start to pull out those KPIs, or like the
Mhm.
things that the industry trends, what's top of mind, etc. And
And
so
what
again,
I'll
it's like,
touch on there real quick, Jake,
yeah, do
like,
it.
and I don't know if this is gonna rattle anybody or not, but like at its core, y'all, like until your reps can do an easy call, the hard stuff doesn't matter. And what happens, like for most any org that's out there struggling right now, reps that are struggling, for the most part, they're not handling the normal calls well, let alone like the more tough, challenging, whatever. It's like, are they even running the normal calls to the level that you want them to? It's making sure that the foundation is so strong, right? Like, sometimes it's too many sports analogies, but it's like, look, you don't practice a 360 dunk to get better at basketball. You get better at basketball that can eventually pull it off. You don't do multiple finger scales when you're playing guitar. You're doing the basic ones first, and then you can pull it off. That's the key to this, y'all. Is that 2 a.m. test? Your reps should be able to do a normal call well, right? Like I don't worry. Like we have a rule: we don't go down the yeah but funnel when we're training or coaching. But yeah, but what if they ask what we're gonna do for the left-handed dyslexic people on the team? It's like when we get that objection, we'll handle it
That's right.
until
It's
you
like
can
you
handle
said.
the how much does this cost question. Nothing else matters, right? So it's just getting that repetition. I can't stress that enough.
And again, I think what a lot of people hopefully should think about, what we're talking about here about repetitions, is, you know, it is okay. And especially for a lot of you, if you're a newer rep, or maybe you're someone who just wants to get better at that, like, write down what you say. I think too often, Katie, it's like they don't take the time, like, okay, how do you handle that? And again, you've got maybe your battle card or whatever, write it in your own language and drill that thing. And you can use ChatGPT to just go back and forth and back and forth. You can say, like, hey, always give me an objection. Always give me at least one objection with every response, right? And that will just train it more and more and more. And so for a vast majority of you who aren't using this to role play,
Mhm.
um, again, don't focus as much on, is this per you know is can I get ChatGPT to be as aggressive as I want it to be? You're not going to do that right now. It's just not going to be able to simulate it. But can it get somebody the same at bats on, like, this use case, this objection, how we solve for trends in an industry? Yeah,
Mhm.
it can do that now, right? For a lot of you out there.
In the
So
way, actually, could I share my screen real quick, Jake, and then
yeah, do it,
I'll
man, for
thing,
sure.
because this is what we were doing. If you saw it when Jake, you can upload something. So what we've always done with our orgs, we call it TIWIC. So TIWIC stands for this is what you know, right? This is what you know. And so we would pre-build these, right? So we would build a TIWIC of like, all right, what's the skill we're working on? What does good look like? But then this is what you know, the persona, the title, the situation, like what you've said before. This is actually what we were uploading in for it to do the role play. Is we would build the scenario and the skill that we were working on, then upload that doc and then go back and forth with it because it also included the what good looks like. But it was the idea of the TIWIC. This is what you know. And this is also what makes, I think, the role playing better in GPTs. It forces that because otherwise, a lot of times managers are like, all right, Jake, so I'm going to be Bob at Superbiz. Let's go. And
That's
it's like,
right.
no, like make it real, make it actually an account and everything else. So Tywick, this is what you know. That's what feeds the role play session even better.
Yeah, you can even upload that. Brandon Davis, I can tell Brandon, he says, I have a ton of ideas about how to leverage this. I'll go take the class and dig deeper. Thanks. Um, that's kind of how this works for a lot of you, is understand it's like there's this initial awakening, then you get overwhelmed, and then you're like, these are the two ways I'm going to use it. And so you don't have to worry about, do I know everything about this? And that's kind of our goal in doing this, is to say, look, here's a new way that now you can add to your arsenal to get up to speed. So for all of you, your homework for today is to go look at your, whether you're somebody who's responsible for setting meetings, someone responsible for closing deals. It could be that, hey, what you need to do is you need to work on your executive presence. Maybe you're somebody who struggles in executives. You can take this same idea and be like, hey, I need to get better at communicating with CFOs, right? And I want you to be a very jargony CFO of a fintech company with 200 people that is very skeptical of almost everything, and I want to practice doing executive level communication. So the way that I taught, the way that I either, if I'm on my phone, I can literally talk to it, or I can type it in, etc. So just think about, that's your homework, everyone. Is just think about what is something in your sales process, or setting meetings, or working with your current accounts, and just go focus on that use case.
Mm.
And I think for a lot of you, that will be absolutely critical. So we'll drop the links here again. Also, if you notice the custom GPTs, and you're somebody who's like, yeah, like I'd like to just like not have to be the expert at prompting, I'll drop some of that stuff. Go check out the custom GPTs. We should be releasing V2 of those probably by the end of the month,
Nice.
realistically. DM me, DM KD, if you're interested in learning more about really any of this. KD, any final thoughts on this
Yes.
topic? Or if you were sitting in somebody's shoes, what you would do next?
One final thought, because I saw it show up in the chat here as well. I did both with my teams internally, like dictation and typing, and I actually came back to typing. And I'll share the reason why is I actually wanted the manual nature of it, because my goal on this is retention and
Yeah, think
repetition,
about it. Yeah,
not
think
just.
about it.
So when you have to think about it and type it out, yes, it's slower, but that's actually increasing retention, which is also the goal of a role play. So
I
don't
love that.
err too far to make it easier with voice. I actually want it to be slower because it forces them to think and engage. So it's actually powerful to do a written typed role play, not just the voice. So just something I wanted to kind of leave people with.
I love that, man. And again, it's just like, so if there's a book, I mean, just to kind of, double down on that, if there's a book that I'm like, I really want to retain it, I do both. I get the Audible version, or
Right.
I get the Kindle
Same.
version with the Audible. And I
Yep.
find that it helps out so dramatically,
Yep.
as opposed to when I just do Audible. I think a lot of people check a lot of book boxes by doing Audible, but you're
Doesn't count.
multitasking and you're not paying attention. So I still
Yeah.
default to the Kindle version more often than not. But I feel like the combo works.
Naval Ravikant said it well. It's like listening to your books is like drinking your vegetables. That
Ooh,
was his
interesting.
analogy.
Yeah, there you go. I
And
like
I was
that.
like, there it is. So, all right, y'all. We appreciate y'all as always.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in a couple weeks on the next one. Take care.